the show.
Hey yo. Yeah, hinted at this earlier today on Instagram. I just wanted to do a video. I've watched several people make videos on the state of comic book collecting or state of comic book market and just general comic book values, the future of comic books and how they'll be collected. And I agree with some of what people are saying, and I disagree with other parts. So I just want to touch on some things and give my thoughts on it. I think that I think if you're completely fatalistic about this, I think that's wrong. I don't think that comic book collecting is going away, but I think it's in a state of flux. I think it's fair to say that, and I think you would have to be in denial to say otherwise. So just touch on some topics. I have a bullet point list. I normally don't, but for this one I did, just because I want to make sure I touched on the things I was thinking about. So what we're seeing, like with regard to comic book values, and even people who claim to be comic book purists care about values of comic books. Like, if you say you don't, I sorry, I don't believe you. Otherwise, I mean, you wouldn't care if the comic even had a cover. Why would you? You would, if all you cared about was reading comics. Like, okay, I guess if you have converted completely over to like omnibus editions and trade paperbacks and you're reading digitally online, then maybe I do. Then maybe I do believe you, because it's clear you're not caring about the value of any of that stuff. Or are you would you sell it, or would someone else sell it? When something happens to you. But I think 90 something percent of people who collect comic books care about the value, even if they don't intend to sell those comics right away, or maybe not for decades. And so, watching values is relevant. For me, it is on two levels. I have my personal collection that I don't intend to sell, I don't know, maybe ever, or certainly not for years. And but I'm keeping some of those comics because I think that they're going to retain or gain value over time. And also I love those comics, but there are also comics I buy specifically for short-term gains, where I am going to try to capitalize on FOMO of others, and it's not comics that I really care about. Like I mentioned, like buying these Sonic the Hedgehog comics. These are not comics I read. I don't care about these comics at all. I buy them to sell them. Period. And I think I've been really transparent about that. But what we're seeing with the market is, some people say it's a correction, and some people see this as an overall change, and I think it's both. I think we've seen, after the comic boom of COVID, we've seen a correction where some of the values just became wildly too high. Not only were they too high for people to afford them, they were too high given what the comic was and how many of them there are out there. I mean, I think, if we're talking about value in terms of pretty much anything that's bought or sold, it's scarcity and demand. So if you're looking at it through that lens, scarcity and demand, a lot of the comics that were booming, I mean, there are millions of copies of some of those out there, and you needed a correction because it's like you can get those comics fairly easily. But changes, I think there are changes coming, or that have been occurring as well. Some of the changes I think that are happening is the comic book collectors are changing. That's one. Number two, I think speculating based upon movies is becoming futile. I think I don't think the movies, not only have they not been very good or very successful, I think that trying to speculate on characters that are going to appear in movies, it might not be the best way to go with your collecting. And I'll talk a little more about that. And so yeah, what worked several years ago, where it's like, hey, the new Marvel movie's coming out, and it just so happens that characters A, B, and C are going to be in it, and we're going to get those first appearances and make a lot of money. That I don't think that works, and I don't think it's going to work. I do think you can capitalize on it, like if you happen to have those comics, but buying those comics and hoping they go up, that's not going to work. I think we have seen certain things where it's like they announce Lobo, and the Lobo comics go way, 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 way up. But holding those comics and expecting them to retain the values that they get when they announce Jason Momoa is not going to happen. But the values go way, way up, and you sell that, Lobo number 1 or Omega Men number 3. Yeah, that completely works. Or crypto, some of the crypto comics went way, way up when when everyone saw crypto in the Superman trailer. Some of these other ones, Metamorpho, I think, these I think you could capitalize on all that stuff right now. Herbie the Robot in Fantastic Four, these types of things. I think if you did that and you sold those comics, you can probably make some money right now. But over time, no, you're not going to. Nobody's going to care about Herbie the Robot in 10 years from now. Sorry, that's just not going to happen. In my opinion, I would be shocked if it did. So anyway, yeah, when it comes to these changes that are occurring just in values, I think some of this is a correction, some of it's just an overall change. So I'll go more into that in a little while. What I think is the smart thing to do if you are collecting for value. But also I wanted to talk about digital copies of anything. Or just where you don't own the physical thing. This has happened with video games, and I think people have been fine with it. I don't play a lot of video games now, but I mean I have some, and I played that Baldur's Gate, and I played Diablo 3 and 4 for a bit, but I'm not like when I was younger and I used to play a lot. But I have no problem with just having an electronic copy of the game and not having the physical copy. That's not a thing for me. I mean, I think in the case of some gamers it might be, particularly since there's been this kind of weirdness where some of these companies, be it Sony or Nintendo or whoever, they're basically selling you like a license to have a copy of the game, but at any time they can revoke that, and suddenly you don't have the game anymore. That would be something, if I were playing for a long time, that I would object to. But for now, that's not something that bothers me. But I digress. When it comes to other things like music, this has been for some time now. Most people have almost all of their music collection is just a digital thing on their phone, and we're just streaming, and people are fine with that. Which I have that as well. I mean, I have my phone for when I'm traveling and I want to listen to music, or if I'm in the gym or these types of things. That, yeah, I have that. But I also have an LP collection, vinyl records, and I think that's better. It's way better. If I have people come over, I'm playing records. And if I want to listen to something while I'm sitting around the house, I'm not listening to a digital copy. I'm listening to the physical media, and I think it's superior. And so I think that's going to stay that way. I think you're going to see that there are some people who will have digital music, and I think that the demand for LP records is going to stick around. there might come a time where people are just, they just have never encountered physical, LP records. Maybe that will happen, but certainly for the near term, I mean, you see nobody's buying CDs, but a lot of people are buying LP records. They sound better and they look cooler. You can get to see the art and lyrics and these kinds of things that you can appreciate. Anyway, that's what I think is going to happen with comics. I think it's going to be very similar to what happened with music. I think you're going to see a proliferation of online copies of comics. But I still think there's going to be a rather large and robust market for at least for next couple decades of people who only will buy physical copies of comics. I think the transition's going to be slower. I think companies are going to want that. I think companies are going to want to try to sell you like a digital online copy of a comic book, and I think there are some people who will be totally comfortable with that. And I think some of the people right now who would describe themselves as a pure comic book collector might go along with that easier. I know that might sound contradictory to being a purist or something, but generally speaking, the people who talk to me about being a purist, they talk about how I read my comic books. I'm a reader, and I'm like, okay, I mean, fair enough. I mean, I read comics too, but I don't read all my comics because I'll be honest with you. I mean, 70-80% of comic books are garbage. Like, they're not good anymore. So, I mean, a lot of it is cover buys and art or old things that are valuable because they are precious and rare. Like, and those aren't for reading. I'm sorry, that's not why you buy those. But I mean, there are plenty of comics I buy specifically and only to read. But yeah, most comics are just not worth reading anymore. Sorry. But if that's you, if you are like specifically and only concerned with reading comics, first off, I think, I mean, I would suggest buying omnibus editions and trade paperbacks is probably better. I mean, you're going to get more bang for your buck. You're going to get more time reading that way. And but alternatively, I think if you decided to start reading online comics, I think for the person who would suggest that the reading of comics is really all that's important. And that's the only real thing that you're doing when you're collecting comic books. I would say that person will probably transition to digital, like online only comics pretty easily. I mean, because you're going to be able to get the same experience. You're going to be able to read that comic, and there's still the artwork that you can appreciate and these kinds of things. So I think there's going to be a market for that, for digital online only comics, and I think how little it costs to produce those for these companies. I think they're going to be excited by that as an option to move into that, and it kind of leads to like the weird, creepy part to this, and the thing that maybe people don't really want to talk about too much, and that's AI. And the more you go into the digital online only, I think this lends itself more to AI art, and also at some point AI story as well. I think right now, when it comes to AI art and AI story, I think it's good. Like, you can look at it and say, but it's obvious. Like, to me, like, when I see it, it's not like it's something where specifically AI art. There's a non-human bent to it that isn't quite what a human would do. It's like an approximation of the way humans see things. So now how much that improves, I don't know. I don't know that can ever be perfected by a computer. to have a real experience when it's just approximating, drawing, from, millions or billions of images and creating this kind of amalgamation of, what a human being experiences and sees. And I don't think it's the same. I think artists are able to do things in a way that a computer can't feel. So I think there will always be a market for an actual artist to create. But I think as soon as companies are able to produce an online only digital product when it comes to comic books, and produce it with AI and don't have to pay artists, I think that's going to be a real limiting factor. And I think at that point we're going to see who, like, the real comic purist is, because again, if that's your only part of digesting a comic book is what was written, then I think it might be okay. It might be pretty good for you. But for me, and I think for many, I think I like not only what's written, and like I said, I keep admitting there, like, when I try to read a lot of comics, I think they're just dog shit. I think they're horrible, and I think they're rushed. I think it's like silly dialogue, like nobody like, and it's also like not much of a story, or not much of a continuing story, and there's too much license being taken with the characters, like, changing things that have been part of that character's history for, I don't know, 20, 30, 50, 80 years, like, to, modernize, or, I don't know, bend it somehow, and I just don't like it. And but I mean, there is still really good stuff. Let's just be honest about that. There's still really good stuff to read, and I try to mention the things that I'm reading that I really enjoy. It's just it's certainly like 3 to 1 stuff I don't enjoy versus things I find that I do. So anyway, yeah. So yeah, I think there is going to come this conflict of digital only versus paper physical copies of comics. And I'm not fatalistic. I'm not one of these people who said, who's going to say, oh, physical copies are dead, they're going to die. I think that's bullshit. I think people who say that don't know what they're talking about. I think they underestimate the kind of tangible thing for a collector of comics, where they're part of the whole nerd subculture is gotta get them all, like the Pokemon kind of thing. I gotta get them, and it's not in a way where it's digital on my computer screen or on my phone. It's like I want to have that in a box sitting there, and I feel more comfortable that it's there, and I want to display it, and I want to show people these things, and like, hey, look how cool this is, and wow, look how old that is, and wow, and it's like it exists, and who knows how many people own that, and where in the world did that go before it arrived to me? Or, like in the case of vintage comics, or even newer comics, where it's like specific artists and the way that they create these images. Like, so there's just if say a computer can do something, you're never going to say, who I really like. I like AI version XYZZ 121234. That computer, I like what they're doing. They're really touching me with the way that they're creating their artwork. It's but like, if I look at something else, like I love Gabriel Delato, and I like the use of light and shadow and texture and stuff that guy uses. So like, I collect Delato covers, even if it's not a comic that I really enjoy reading. It's still these covers and having a physical, having it physically in hand. I really like that, and signed copies I really like to have. So there's differences, I guess, in how you're collecting, but I think that there's a large percentage who really like to have the physical copy of that thing, for the reasons I'm saying. So yeah, I don't know how all that's going to play out, but I don't believe that physical copies of comic books are going away anytime soon, and maybe ever. But yeah, the struggle's coming, and I think it's going to be real for some artists for a while. I don't know what that means, and yeah, I think that's going to be in all media, though. It's going to be in movies and regular books and, you name it. Video games, anything where people are designing that thing, and AI is going to be able to pump it out, thousands of different things a day, for nothing, for no money. I mean, yeah, it's going to be a struggle, but I think people should relax. I don't believe physical copies are going away, but I do believe there's going to be a conflict, and there's going to be these, kind of compartmentalization of people who are into comics. People are going to be completely comfortable on one hand, with just reading a copy online because they really just want to keep up with the story, and they don't really care about the having that physical copy of that thing, and people who really do want that physical copy, and they want to have it in their hand or in their box or on their wall. They want that because they have this collector's mindset where they want that thing. Anyway, yeah. So this does lead to like a driver of value to me. I do think that what we've seen with a lot of the modern comics, I think over time, most modern comics, with your 40 different variants and these kind of things, I don't think these hold value over time. I just don't. I think what you're going to see is, again, when we're talking about supply and demand, and I think the comics that are going to always have value, and I think are going to have exponentially more value, are the in-demand golden age, the key silver age, and then a handful of some bronze, and maybe just a small fraction of modern are going to retain value, and I think everything else is going to be of very little value. There are tons of them out there, and tons of them that people have kept in really, really great condition. And if you start to see this fading of the hobby, there's still going to be people who collect it. But I do believe that it transitions more almost into like a rare book collector type thing, where the a first edition of Wizard of Oz or Gone with the Wind, these types of things, they'll always have value. And earliest edition of the Magna Carta or a Gutenberg Bible or these types of things, these things will retain value forever. Letters from Benjamin Franklin or something like this. These things, because of the significance of the thing, these will always retain value. So when it comes to these key things that have made their way into pop culture forever, I believe. I don't believe that and historically that they've made their way into the modern consciousness. I don't think they go away. I don't think anybody's going to forget about Superman in the next 30 years. I don't. I mean, if they haven't forgotten about the Wizard of Oz or like I said, Gone with the Wind, or these types of things, or I don't know, various Stephen King stories or whatever. And those like first editions, that are less common, still have a ton of value. I think that those things are not only going to retain value. I think they're going to be, again, exponentially more valuable. So like a an Action Comics #1 is untouchable for most of us, but I think it'll come to a point where it's like fine art, like where it'll get into the point where it's like the wealthiest of the wealthy are dealing with that, are dealing that in Sotheby's auctions to the same way they're talking about like a Picasso. Like I think it's like a way to shelter their money, even, to you can put it into that thing, and it will gain value over time, and you're sheltering it from taxes and unrealized gains and things, because I mean, a lot of rich people do that, and I think they're going to do that with a lot of the in-demand golden age. Now, what stays in demand, I don't know. My suspicion is people like to be scared, and people are also they're also they like to be titillated too. So I think things that have had I think horror comics, I think specifically old golden age horror, will always have a market. I think they're cool in and of them, what they are, and I think the big keys for the really big superheroes that nobody's ever going to forget about, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Spider-Man, these types of things will always have a market. And I also kind of think that what we're seeing with this, kind of like romance titles, I think that probably has legs. That's a guess. But I don't believe Westerns are ever coming back. I'm sorry. I mean, I think that had its time. I could be wrong. There could be like some resurgence of Americana type thing where people, get nostalgic for, the Lone Ranger or something. I don't see that happening, myself personally. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess what I'm saying about that is I think that the scarcity and what I believe to be the continued demand of some of the golden age stuff that is valuable now, I think it's going to always be valuable, and I think it's going to be way more valuable because there's just so few of it, and what's around is in such, a lot of it's in really bad shape, and people did not take care of that stuff back then. So much of it was burnt and rolled up and put in the back of some kid's pocket, or cut up, and panels cut out of it. It's like yeah, or just rusted and water damaged or something, in somebody's basement. So yeah, I think that's what I think. I think I don't think the hobby's going completely away. I still believe comic books will be valuable in certain cases. And I still think people are going to collect comic books 20, 30 years from now. I just think it's changing. I just don't think you're probably not going to have as many people into it. And I think there's going to be a segmentation, segments of the hobby where, if you're specifically and only concerned about reading comics, I think you might be very comfortable with online comics. And I think if you're one of these people who wants to have the thing, like, whatever that is, if you're collecting coins or pet rocks or whatever the hell it is, you're having that physical thing in your hand is going to be more important to you than just reading whatever comic that is. Anyway, that's how I see it. I be interested to hear what other people have to say about this. I know that this is going to be a controversial topic. I know people are going to not only disagree with some of my takes on this, but I think there are people that are really passionate about this. I think there are some people right now who'll say, no, comics are dead. They're totally dead. And I think there are other people who might not think there's any change. And then I think other people who will disagree with my take about digital, like, online. And there might be even people who think that it's going to be better. Like, that would be really interesting. If somebody thinks like AI is going to improve what we see in comics, I'd really like to hear that. I don't know, the limits of, I don't think anybody knows yet the limits of what AI is capable of. But, yeah, that's what I think, Anyway, Cliff Notes, change is coming. It's When it comes to values, some of this is correction, some of this is outright change, and the hobby's never going to be the same. AI is coming. I'm not that excited about that, but it's inevitable. And digital, online only copies of comics, I think, is going to be not only coming. I think it's going to be proliferated, but I don't believe it's a death blow to physical copies. And in my opinion, do not take this as investment advice. I think the value of comics is going to go older and older. It's going to skew older comics rather than more recent, variant number X or first appearance of some character that nobody's going to care about 2 years from now. Like I think. Yeah, I think the big ones are gonna stay big and get even bigger, and I think golden age is going to get massive. I think select silver age is going to get massive, and I think there's a handful of bronze that are gonna also do well over time. But that's my opinion. Don't take that as investment advice. That's just what I'm doing. That's like, if I'm going to spend a lot of money, I'm not going to spend a lot of money on a modern comic. I'm not. I'll buy some, and if I am, the only reason I'm doing it is because I'm selling it. I'm going to improve it somehow and sell it. I'm going to either clean and press it myself or send it to Ron at Palm Beach Pressers, clean and press it, get it graded, and I'm selling it. That's what I'm doing. So I can buy other comics. So I can buy comics like these. I'm selling the modern comics so I can buy those. Anyway, 31-minute video. I didn't intend for it to be that way, but yeah, please subscribe if you're not subscribed. Please, like a comment. It helps. Channel's growing up to 122 subscribers. And I'm gonna have a little giveaway. I'm gonna do a giveaway at 250. I've said that already, 250 subscribers, but I'm gonna have a really small one. Just some reading copies, things I want people to read that I think are really cool that I'm gonna give away. That might be the next video. I'll describe how we're gonna do that giveaway. It's gonna be real simple. It's not a lot of comics. It's just kind of one thing, and maybe I'll throw in another comic. Anyway, hope you're doing well. Hope your weekend was great. I hope all the people in your life are doing well. And that's it for now. Again, comment. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts.